Let's bring into our discussion Shannon Scribner. She's with Oxfam here in Washington, D.C., where she leads the humanitarian policy team. We heard earlier in the broadcast the Malta Prime Minister, Joseph Muscat, saying that there are concerns about attitudes adopted by the U.S. administration. And he also went on to say that what this great power does directly affects Europe. So talk to me about kind of the domino effect, action, reaction. What does this do for the global migration crisis?
So the global migration crisis right now, we're seeing 65 million people who have been forced from their homes. It's the largest we've seen since World War II. And instead of world leaders actually responding by upholding people's rights to seek asylum and also making sure that people are safe and they have dignity, what we're seeing is world leaders actually preventing people from fleeing in the first place, or when they do flee, returning them home. So if we look at what just happened in the U.S., Trump just closed down the U.S. refugee resettlement program for 120 days. It's indefinitely closed down for Syrian refugees, and then he just banned countries, 7 countries, and they're all Muslim countries, from people coming to this country. So that has ripple effects for the rest of the world, but we're also seeing other world leaders also close their borders, also sending people home. So it's having a ripple effect across the globe.
And so take that a step further. What happens with these ripple effects?
So what happens in the case of the United States is that we are no longer admitting Syrian refugees or people who are waiting to be resettled in the U.S. So we had 20,000 people that had already been through extreme vetting. They had gone through 2 years of answering questions, background checks, talking to the FBI, talking to Homeland Security. They're no longer allowed to come into our country. So then that sets standards for the rest of the world to say, well, the United States isn't allowing people in. Why do we have to do that? And I think what we've seen coming out of Malta is that the EU leaders are also saying to Libya, well, just keep people where they are, or we want you to help us send people back. And what Oxfam is finding is that people coming from Libya are actually experiencing what they're calling a hell. People have been beaten, they've been tortured, they've been starved, and those people now are going to be prevented from leaving Libya and seeking shelter that's afforded to them under international humanitarian law.
The beliefs from the Trump administration, make America safer. By doing this, it's going to ensure that the bad guys, the bad hombres, as Donald Trump likes to say, won't get into the United States. And then there are some who say that this actually might encourage ISIL militants to strike out as well. I want to get your thoughts on that.
So the fact is that the U.S. has already resettled thousands of Muslims from Iraq, from Syria, from Yemen, and that those people have become U.S. citizens, and they've contributed to our society. They've contributed culturally and also economically. So we can actually keep ourselves safe and also accept vulnerable people. We've proved that. But then, to your point, I do think that it is feeding into the kind of Islam or terrorists looking at this is a war against Islam, and that's very troubling.
We heard these leaders in Malta talking. It seems as though there's a disconnect between the EU and the United States. Can they work together to tackle this issue?
I hope so, and it's definitely needed. I mean, so the U.S. Can be sending aid to these countries where people are fleeing from, and both the United States and the EU leaders need to look at the root causes that are causing people to flee in the first place, and they need to address those root causes instead of building walls and keeping people out. Or we're just going to continue to see that 65 million number could continue to increase.
Shannon, thanks so much for coming in and talking to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.